Okay.
I will stop sharing, Daniel, so you can.
All right. Thank you very much. Right. So from where I sit, it's still morning. And so I'll say good morning. And those of us who have passed morning into afternoon and also into evening, say good afternoon and good evening. I want to welcome all of us to this first training session of the Digital Rights Organizers under the leadership of PSI with support from FES. In the next 3 hours, we'll go through a series of topics, and these topics are basically geared towards publicly led digitalization process of our economies and our labor space. So before we start, we should familiarize ourselves with some pieces of information to ensure a successful training session. So by way of introduction, kindly type your name and country in the chat box. Type your name and country in the chat box. Kindly note that this meeting will be recorded. Therefore, if you have issues with your voice, video, or image being used for media, reporting, and campaign purposes, kindly indicate. Otherwise, by staying, you agree to us recording the session in whatever productive way the recording could be used. The recording will not be used for commercial or profit-making purposes. All microphones should be muted until you have been given the opportunity to speak. While the training session is ongoing, if you have comments, kindly put them in the chat box. There is language interpretation. Kindly check on the globe icon at the bottom right of the interface. Choose your language. So if you are speaking you are going to speak and listen in French, choose French. If you are going to speak and listen in Arabic, please choose Arabic. There is interpretation for French and Arabic. If you have questions that are not addressed during the training session, kindly write them to me. I'll forward them to Christina. Since this is a training session, we are required to stay throughout the session. There will be breaks during the session. As indicated during the orientation session, some of you will be called upon to record your testimonies after this first session. You will be guided on what to do. And already some of you have been contacted. So right after the session, I would stay on and speak with you and guide you on your recordings. And so on this note, I would like to introduce the Regional Secretary of PSI, Africa and Arab countries, Brother Sani Baba, to share a remark or to make a remark. So Comrade Sani, please, if you are here, we are happy to hear you speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Dan. I don't know whether is my connection stable?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. If I hinted you earlier that my connection today is disappointing me, so in case you lose me, you please go ahead. Let me
yes, please.
Join you to say a very good morning and good afternoon to the participants that are really able to join this program, this training session. But before I go very much further, let me take this opportunity to thank Daniel, Batosa, and Christina for organizing this training session, which is really going to help our region to take us forward. I want to thank all the participants for finding time to really join this session despite their very, very crowded schedules. And I'm happy, I'm been told that we have participants from all over the sub-regions, the 4 sub-regions in the region. I'm really happy to see all the names that are here. But also let me take this opportunity to be in solidarity with our comrades from Swaziland who are not able to join because of the current ongoing political turmoil in that particular country. Our solidarity and warm greetings goes to all our comrades in Swaziland who are facing a lot of challenges with the kingdom. And we hope very soon they will get over it and enjoy the level of democracy we're enjoying in other parts of the world. Let me not take much time because talking about these issues will definitely go into the training. And really, I don't want to take the beauty of what these comrades are really going to pass through. But I want to assure all our colleagues here that after the training, definitely we'll be looking towards taking all the activities forward. From the regional level, I want to assure you that we'll do all that is needed to be done to make sure that we do what is very much expected from us because we're passing through a lot of challenges. And I believe in the course of this training, because of the problems of connection, many of you will be falling in and falling back. These are the kind of challenges we're facing. And definitely, after this training, you will definitely have a lot to offer to our sectors, to our region, and to all our comrades and our unions. So I want to thank all of you, Daniel Beko, Daniel Batosa, and Christina, for really deeming it fit to start with this region on this particular great training. So comrades, I wish you all the best. Stay safe and stay healthy. And after the training, I wish you continuous support from the region. And also, of course, our focal person, Daniel Batosa, who is young and dynamic and really a forward-looking guy. So thank you, comrades.
Thank you very, very much, Comrade Sani, for your beautiful remarks and words of encouragement, and also holding our hands to stand in solidarity with our comrades from Swaziland, some of which registered for this training, but for the political turmoil and the call for democracy, they have not been able to join us. And so we still stand in solidarity with them. You have set the tone for us to invite the Assistant Deputy General Secretary of PSI in charge of policy and governance, Brother Daniel Betosa. Danny, please take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Roberto, and thank you, Sani, as well. It's a real pleasure to be here at this first digitalization training. I'd like to also express from head office and all around the world our solidarity with the comrades in Swaziland. We are with them in their struggle, and we hope that things get better soon. And also, I think we all probably would recognize that we come together in difficult times with the pandemic, but also other political instability, and that everybody who's here has made an effort to be here, and we really appreciate that. From PSI global perspective, we've been working on digitalization now for about 3 years. And one of the things we realized was that there's so much to digitalization. It's hard to know where to start, and many unions struggle to know where to start. And this is made harder by the speed of the change, but also the massive corporate resources that are spent on shaping and spreading the narratives that support their interests. And so one of the things we did recently was to launch our union action guide on digitalization. And this just outlines where we think the most important issues are for public service unions and where they might need to focus. And it sets out work needed in the future for workers and unions in the public sector in particular to take control of our digital future. And that document also provides resources for unions in specific areas. So I'd encourage everyone to have a look at it. If not to read it from one end to the other, certainly to have it handy to refer to when you need to. But that guide is built around a number of PSI's areas of focus. And I'll quickly just outline the 4 key ones. The first is the effect on workers in the workplace. And many of you, the first contact you'll have is when your members ask you, something's going on in my workplace. Can you help me? And this is things like surveillance and monitoring, the introduction of new technology, loss of jobs or work intensification. And we know with COVID, for many workers, teleworking has become an important issue. And these are the sort of issues that our members raise with us and say, can you help me? And we've produced a report called Digitalisation and Public Services, a Labor Perspective, which outlines these issues. But one of the most important things it says is that unions need to have a say and an influence in collective bargaining. And we're working on a compendium of collective bargaining clauses that will release later this year. So if you want to know what other unions have been doing in their collective bargaining agreements, you can go and find online a range of clauses that are broken down by the area and look at what other unions are doing, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The second area is the effect on public services, because digital reform too often means cuts. It means jobs going or job changes, and it means savings and not better services. It also leads to outsourcing and privatization. And so instead of building the capacity governments need to control our digital future, they outsource them to private companies who then capture and control us. They control our data and they can control what we do with it. And this year, we'll be putting out a report that looks at the way in which workers, but also governments, need to get control of that data. Third, PSI for a while has been doing work on how we get control over these digital processes. And there's a report we put out about 3 years ago called Economic Rights in a Data-Based Society. And it looks at the way in which governments are giving away their data to these private companies who are capturing them. And that means that the private sector often has more information about what government is doing than the government does. It has more information about what the workers are doing than the workers do. And they also capture the value of that. And these rules are regulated in trade agreements. And I know in your region, you've been doing a lot of work on trade agreements. Daniel Oberko has been doing quite a lot, but coordinating a great team. But these trade agreements are really setting the rules for how big firms control that data. And that brings us to a slightly related point, which is the issue of corporate power and the way in which corporations are getting more and more power over government, over workers, over citizens. It's particularly important in your region and in other regions in the global south, because the big tech firms and sometimes the governments that from the countries they're from are promoting technology as the solution and the pathway to development. And so there's a lot of rhetoric created by these firms that you need to have digital solutions. This is the way to modernize and to develop your economy. But too often they're just another form of extractive industry that the corporations use to transfer the wealth from your countries to big tech firms, and often through tax havens. And I know Daniel Oberko has been doing a lot of work, and again, the team's been doing a lot of work on tax policy. And too often these digital firms are the pioneers in extracting the wealth and sending it to tax havens. And so the question for us is, how do we stop digital colonialism? How do we stop digitalization just being the latest form? Because we know that we were promised that resources would be the path to development, and often they've created more problems than they've solved. And the real risk is that digitalization will as well. And this brings us to our last area of PSI's priority, and that is, how do we build our own capacity to deal with these issues? And PSI has launched this program, Our Digital Future, and Christina has been heavily involved in the development of it, as has Daniel and all of our staff. How do we help our affiliates to build the capacity they need to address these challenges? Because we need to make sure that we know what they are if we're to have any chance to help our members fight back. And to do this, unions have got to understand the issues. We've got to develop our own strategies. We've got to skill up our staff and our leaders and our activists. And this really is the main objective of our digital future. And you are the very first people in your region to be trained as digital rights organisers. But later this year and next year, we're going to reach out and engage union leaders, so they know what the issues are. They know how to lead their union to make sure you're supported and their unions are ready for the challenge. And then finally, at the end of this program, it's a 2.5-year program, we want to train bargaining officers and lay leaders, to ensure that the people who do the collective bargaining are actually equipped both with you as experts and hands-on leaders, but also their own union leaders have buy-in and are supporting the program. And then they can work with the members to make sure that they are able in the workplace to use collective bargaining as a tool to protect their interests. So you're really the first and you're the core of this program. We really want you to take this information back and share it with your unions and other unions in your countries and your region. Work with Daniel Aberko and Sani and the whole team to build a group of people in the region who are experts, who have capacity, who can provide leadership, and hopefully we can build from there. As I mentioned, we're very lucky to be working with Christina Kolkloff. She's a global digitalization expert. She's also a comrade and a trade unionist. She's been a leader in her own trade union. She's been a leader in the global union federations. She's our main trainer and resource for our digital future. And she worked with us to write the Digital Action Guide. So you're in great hands between the regional staff and Christina. We've got some great resources and some research. This is the beginning of a journey. I'm really thrilled to be here with you. Thank you for coming today and making the effort in these difficult times. I really hope you get a lot out of it today. I'll try to join as often as I can, but when I'm not here, you're in the very, very capable hands of Brother Aberko and Sister Kolkloff. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Brother Daniel Betosa, for actually clearly stating why this meeting is very, very important for us as workers and also most critically as young people, because I realize that if you look at our list, a lot of the participants here are young people, and so it provides some kind of hope and also future for the project and also for our unions. I think that you have made it clear about the need for workers to get involved within the context of our workers' rights, be it human right, our right to privacy, and also the need to use our collective bargaining agreement to protect our rights. Also clearly providing a roadmap as to the training processes, because you have mentioned that after this training, our general secretaries are also going to get involved with the training in the coming year. We are also going to take particular interest of our various union executives who are taking part in our collective bargaining processes in our various unions. And so this is key for us. And to the participants, I'm happy to also announce that this will not be the beginning. It's actually the beginning of great things to happen, because from here, like we said in the orientation, you are the key digital rights organizer for your union and also for your country. We are going to put you in groups. We are going to develop national activities, regional activities, and like the regional secretary said, we are going to have the support from the region. And so wish you all the best. On this note, I would want to invite a speaker from our main funding support. She is in the person of Miss Andrea Fisher. She's an expert in FES in the Regional Trade Union Project for Middle East and North Africa. And so on these notes, I invite Andrea Fisher to speak. Thank you very much and welcome, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Daniel. In the name of FES, Friedrich Ebert Foundation, I would like to welcome you all to the Digital Rights Organizers Training. It's a great honor to be working with PSI and supporting such an important initiative, and a special thank you to Daniel beforehand. I'm also especially honored to meet you, the future digital rights organizers, leaders of the region in this issue here today. The ongoing pandemic has affected each and every one of us very much in our social life, and the need for social distancing has created also a great willingness among all of us to quickly accept and adopt new ways of internet services, by which we in the end all have contributed to accelerating the digital transformation. We share our personal data constantly and without much consideration by using standard apps like COVID-19 tracking, Google Maps, Facebook, And we feed this data to the digital tech companies who have grown very much in size and scope. And this translates into more power for them, which they can use to influence and shape the world according to their interests. And it's always important to remember that digitalization, even though highly technological, it's human-made and it's in the end driven by human input. It doesn't follow a natural order. And we believe that trade unions can and must play a crucial role in influencing the discourse and policies around digital rights. As the representatives of workers and social rights, trade unions should not and cannot sit back and watch digitalization happen around them. In fact, trade unions should use this chance to advocate for a socially just digital transformation, which will benefit all of us. The world of the future is really a connected world, and networks and knowledge will be key in shaping this digital transformation. This gives a real powerful momentum to trade unions and to you as digital rights organizers in particular. And we hope that you will use your power bases and build strong and sustainable networks, even across formal and traditional boundaries. It's a great chance to even overcome language barriers and connect sub-regions of the African countries and the MENA region in order to develop and voice very strong and unified trade union demands and positions. At FPS, we believe that PSI has started a very relevant project, and we're very proud of our partnership with them. Our aim is to achieve a socially just world by pursuing the values of social democracy. We have a historically grown close relationship with trade unions on national, regional, and global levels. And now we look forward to seeing the Union Centers of Excellence evolve under your leadership. I wish you all a very interesting training. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea. We really appreciate your remarks, and also, reiterating the relationship between FES and PSI, and also continued support in this project. On these notes, comrades, I would hand you over to the ever ready, our expert, Christina. Thank you very much. Is Christina here?
She was here just a moment ago.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure
I
where
think
she is. While we wait for her, I'd just like to
let's
echo
wait for her.
Daniel Oberko's
thanks
to FES.
Right.
FES has been supporting PSI now for a number of years in our work on making a fair and just globalization. And most of you will have worked with Daniel Oberko or know of Daniel and the team's work around trade policy and also around tax policy. Some of that work is very topical at the moment. And we've also worked with FES on the importance of quality public services and the way in which quality public services make for fairer and more equal and more just societies, particularly for the most vulnerable. And FES has been very instrumental in that work. And as part of that, this work on digitalization has come about. And Andrea mentioned that FES is excited to be working with us. We're thrilled to be working with FES because we think this is probably one of the first major rollouts of digitalization training for workers anywhere in the world on a global scale. And that really is only possible because of the generous support and also the vision of FES. They were quite visionary when they started working with us on trade, when many people in the global trade union movement were not sensitized to trade, and tax justice as well. PSI was an early mover on tax justice, and we were only able to do as much as we could because of the support of FES. And I think FES, again, is quite visionary in its support for us around digitalization. So we're thrilled to be working with FES, because this is the sort of ambitious program that's only possible with those partnerships. Yeah, is Christina back?
No, she's not. And so we'll use this opportunity to have a few discussions regarding the group formation. Comrades, the idea about the group formation is that once the training is done, so the training is taking place on the 6th, the 13th, and the 30th of July. So once the training is done, we are going to put you in groups. And obviously, because of language, we'll put our Arab comrades in groups, of participants from the MENA region will put you in groups, participants from French-speaking Africa in groups, and also participants from English-speaking Africa. And basically what we expect during the discussions in your groups is to develop follow-up activities, one for your union and also the trade union movement in your country. Because the idea is that you are going to be a trainer to those who haven't had the opportunity to go through this training. So we expect you to work together. One strategy is that if you are coming from the same union, and for example, if you are two in the same union, it helps with the planning and development of your follow-up activities. If you are more than one in the same country, it also helps. From the same national union center, it also helps. So we look forward to forming this group. As far as the group is concerned, you can decide whether to be meeting on WhatsApp, whether to use Telegram or use Google Meet to have your meetings and your discussions. But like we have said, this meeting or this training session isn't going to be a one-off thing. It's the beginning of good and wonderful things to happen as far as our campaign for digitalization is concerned. And so I'm sure there will be questions, but before that, Christina is back. So I'll hand over the session to her.
Thank you, Daniel, and sorry about that, Andrea. I was listening so concentrated at your wonderful words, and for the third time this hour, my computer decided to crash. But brothers and sisters, Sani, Daniel Bertosa, also very warm and excited welcome from me to your eagerness to learn about this digitalization and the impact that it's going to have on your countries, on your regions. It is already having a very dire, I would say, and serious effect on the democratic possibilities for your public services to really take command of the development of Africa, of the Arabic countries. And although this sounds quite bleak, I also think it's so important that we understand how serious the impacts from digital trade, as Daniel Oberko is working on, but this whole thing called digitalization is on your region, but also why, as Andrea was saying and Daniel was saying, that we really need strong union responses. So it's just a thrill to see 57 of you on this call. And we will be having 3 really intense workshops, but there's going to be plenty of time for you to ask questions, or if you feel that you want me to explain something one more time, we'll do that. This training really is for you, and how you can, whilst you're learning about all these things, can think about how can I talk to my colleagues about this back home in my union? How can I maybe really sort of start some discussions? How can we begin to look for things that we maybe not have seen before and pay attention to certain governmental discussions and things that are going on which really require a strong union presence? As Daniel Oberko said, it's such a joy to see so many of you here from the younger generation. The future of Africa, of the Arabic countries, is in your hands. And if we can support you in really building this union response and your cooperation, You know, together, brothers and sisters, we are much stronger than we are alone. And through these workshops, hopefully you will really create this understanding that you are the digital rights organizers, and that you together as a team can really start shifting the digital discussions. So this is, you know, are going to be our journey, and I'm just going to start sharing my screen so that you can let me know if you can see it now. Daniel, is it okay? Give me a nod. Yeah, great. So again, thanks also from me to FES. I think, and this we have to admit, there are not many foundations across the world who are so attentive to digitalization and workers as FES are. Lots of foundations like to talk about workers. They want to research about workers, but they don't want to empower workers. And this is where I think FES, with their generous contributions to this whole subject across the world in all regions, is really doing a remarkable job. So this course today, our first workshop, you know, we have all heard about robots, about automation, about social media. But as Daniel Bertossa said in his introduction, a lot of these things we hear, they're corporate narratives. They are narratives and truths which have been put out there and have become normalized. So our governments are almost like parrots to the corporate narrative. Oh, social media sets us free. And we can hear the government say social media sets us free. But, you know, I think a really good way we can begin to put the critical hat on is to pick some of those narratives apart and really begin to see, well, really, what is happening? Is it true what they're saying? And if it is true, how should we begin to formalize a response to this? So this is going to be our first session today. As Daniel mentioned, and maybe in the chat, Alberto, you could put the link to the Union Action Guide. This Union Action Guide kind of sets the scene, and it's a long document, but you will be able to see, I can see some of you work for health unions, some of you in the municipalities, and you'll be able to go through that document and pick out those sort of areas of your main concern, but also around digitalization and development. So that will be a really good beginning, and we'll be able to reference back to that document as we go through these workshops. Today, then, we're going to be unpacking this whole thing called digital. Is it really true what we hear? What could be some of the substantiations we could be giving to this? Before, in our next workshop next week, we're kind of going to dive into the engine room of these things called digital tools. You know, what makes them different from a robot before or a machine in a factory before is that these digital tools are partly creating data. They're taking data from us, as Andrea was saying, you know, that everything we do almost, if we pay with our credit card, use our mobile phones, we're creating data, somebody's taking that data from us. And these digital tools, they create data, they extract data, and then what they do, which is the most sort of alarming issue here, is they put all of those sort of lessons they learn from this data. Oh, Daniel likes organic bananas over ordinary bananas, or he goes for long runs, or he doesn't. All of those conclusions they're drawing from that data is then what is affecting our lives, is what is manipulating our lives. And some of you have heard of the dramas around Cambridge Analytica, Palantir, who are affecting elections in some of your countries, but also how health data, how digital identities are being used to monitor and survey us, right? But in order for us to be able to give a strong union response where we kind of say, well, digitalization can be good, but it needs to be framed, then we have to understand this thing called data, algorithms, AI. You know, we're not going to become computer programmers in the next workshop, but we will get a bigger understanding of why it is so important that unions have a response to this. And that then leads us to our third workshop, where we will really begin to discuss together what could you in your countries and regions do, and how could you form a union response. And this is very much going to be a discussion scenario, a discussion workshop, where I will give you some ideas, and it will be great to hear, well, is this possible in your countries, in your regions? And, you know, how can we then begin to say, hello, we are here. You know, so many discussions are going on about the future of work, and they never include the worker's voice. And I think, you know, the more that we understand and know about these things, and as Daniel Bertossa said, the union leaders will be trained next, and then those who are out there in the workplaces, together we'll be able to form this very strong presence. Now, across the world, your brothers and sisters in all of the other regions, in the Asia Pacific, in Latin America, North America, in the greater European region, in Canada and the Caribbean, are being trained exactly as you are. Of course, some of the lessons are different because their regions are a little bit different from yours, but the basic knowledge will be the same, enabling us to understand if a Latin American or Brazilian company starts investing in South Africa, and they're doing this by digital sort of extraction, you know, how can you work together with your DRO brothers and sisters from Latin America to really understand and again respond? So this is our journey. It's going to be intense. I really, really urge you to put your hand up or write in the chat if you have any questions, so that we together can form, you know, these workshops so it really meets your needs. So I can see somebody's written in the chat here. I just want to check if there's, oh, it's just the comment from Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. So without further ado, let's dive into this. So today, just a little bit introduction here from me. Then we can discuss some of the expectations you have before we dive a little bit back into history, because one of the biggest sort of truths that are being fed us right now is that somehow this digitalization is inevitable, that it's coming almost like it's a civilization in its own right. And this technological revolution is something we all have to adjust to. But is that really the case? You know, what comes first? Does the social revolution come before a technological one? Or can technology, as Andrea was saying, almost dealt with as if it is beyond human control? Can we actually, through a social revolution, form that technological revolution? Then we're going to go into debunking these myths, these narratives that industry especially would like us to believe before we start looking ahead. In between all of this, as Alberto said, we will have some breaks, and it's very important in the breaks that you get up and you swing your arms a bit and sort of really just oxygenize, because this is quite heavy work we're going to be going through. Okay, so a few words about me, and thank you already for the very, very kind words from Daniel Bertossa and Alberto. It is such an honor to work with PSI, who is one of the unions who really puts digitalization at the top of their priorities. It is, as Daniel Bertossa said, a very difficult subject, because it sort of infects and impacts every single aspect of what it is to be a trade unionist, from our wages to our working conditions, to the types of contracts we get, to the growth of informal work, to the growth of non-standard forms of employment. It's everything, to stress levels, mental health, privacy rights. So it's such a big topic that some unions have felt, where do we start? And hopefully, you know, by working together in this 3-year, 2.5-year project, we can really build that good understanding. I have worked for a number of years in the union movement at national, regional, and global level, and have specialized in all of this called digital, and really try to understand partly why why are workers so underexposed in all of these discussions? Why is it that workers don't have the same rights across the world as citizens or consumers do? You know, what is it about digitalization of work that we have to pay particular attention to? So that's what I've been doing. I sit also in a range of intergovernmental organizations and boards and try to influence there too. But brothers and sisters, I have to tell you, it is an uphill battle. The corporate capture that Daniel Batosa was talking about is so real, unfortunately, in the minds of many of our governments. So we have a lot in front of us that we need to do. But of course, I am very optimistic that it can and will be done. As you can see there, there's my email if any of you want to get in contact, but also if any of you happen to be on Twitter, I do a lot of tweeting about all of these issues we will be discussing. So I'm just want to ask before we start and try and sort of really think here a little bit, but how would you evaluate your sort of digital knowledge? If you just write in the chat out of 100, where 100, you're top skilled, you get it, you understand everything about these algorithms and AI, and 0 is, I've never heard anything about it. If you just write in the chat their number, where would you say you are on the digitalization, your knowledge of the digitalization of work? So let me just see in the chat here if you're writing any numbers. Yeah, keep going. That's great. Thank you, Equel, Bongani, Wanda, Simusele. Yeah. Sharif. This is great. Winnie, Badi. Yeah, around so 20%, 50%, some of you 40. Okay, that's fine. So we're ranging between 10, 15% up to 50% at the most. And this is very similar to your colleagues also again in other regions. And comrades, brothers and sisters, this is this is not you. We have been deliberately, as workers, as unionists, sort of kept in a little bit in the dark here. All of us who are above the age of 40, who are listening to this, let's also admit it, we kind of sleepwalked into this situation of, how handy some of these digital tools, smartphones and all of that are. I mean, I remember before we even had a mobile phone, and the first mobile phone I had, it was so thick, you almost had to hold it with 2 hands and it had an aerial on it, right? And then suddenly they started getting color screens and that was nice. And then these little icons, these little apps started forming. And, at least in my part of the world in Europe, we never really asked, why is this all given to us for free? We never asked that. And then, before we knew of it, blah, 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 everybody was on email, everybody was on the internet who had access to it. And this whole sort of flush, this wave of digitalization just came over us. But none of us really have ever been trained in understanding the implications of all of this. So that you feel you're between 10, 15% and 50%, that is, it's great if you're up there hitting the 40, 50%. But for the rest of us, this is a really good acknowledgement. We are kind of kept in the dark rather deliberately. And this is, again, one of the things that this project here hopes to address. Now I'm going to ask you another question, and that is, how knowledgeable do you think your members are? So the members of your unions, where are they roughly knowledge-wise? Again, in percentage around the digitalization of their work. Or as Andrea was talking about, this whole thing around social media, Facebook and the rest of it. So Randy, you score them quite low, 5%. We have a John Doe on the line, that's interesting, at 30. 20, Mambana. Pulling 5 as well. Badia. So in general, it seems I'm a little bit right in you sensing, Deborah, that it's quite low, 3%. That you think your members are less informed than you are. And again, brothers and sisters, this reflects very well what is the situation in other regions of the world. That our members who go about their daily lives, who have their jobs or in between jobs or looking for jobs, or maybe have 2 or more jobs, they know very little about this digitalization. Would any of you like to take the microphone and share with me why you scored as you did? And maybe share with the group why you think members have a little bit less knowledge than you do.
Okay, so if you want to speak, kindly show by hand and we would call you.
Don't be shy. You're very welcome to
Okay.
share.
So the first person, James, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning, James.
Our members like I wrote in the chat have 15% knowledge about digitalization, already using the IT means to communicate, to relate with themselves. And also some of our members' workplaces are becoming automated and they are also complying with the automated practices. And as such, they are getting exposed to work is changing and the IT is the future of work.
Thank you, James. Your connection was a little bit hard there, but if I heard you correctly, that they are aware that their jobs are
Daniel,
changing.
can you hear? Yes, they are. Can you hear me?
Yes, maybe, James, if you turn off your video, the sound will go through better.
Like I said, about 15% of them are aware of digitalization.
Yeah.
One, because they are aware that their work are becoming automated and their modes of work is also changing with the use of IT.
Yeah.
And a good number of them are also using IT to relate and communicate with themselves and also organize their work.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's that very good picture of the changing nature of work. Absolutely. But still 15% only. That's not very high. Would anybody else like to share why they scored their members as they did?
So next is Winnie Lago.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danny. The reason why I scored my members like that is because I feel most of our members are the aging members who are almost going for retirement. And even though they have WhatsApp or they use social media, you still find they're still skeptical about using Skype or even Zoom to hold meetings. They still believe in having physical meetings. And now that COVID is here with us, you know, for them still accepting the usage of Zoom and Skype and all these digital to hold, you know, like virtual meetings, it's still quite a challenge because you invite them for a meeting and, you know, everyone's mic is on and they're like, yeah, I can see you and I. So trying to get control of, yeah, I think we are still not there, or the concept of digitalization, how we understand it. It's maybe it's different. You can tell us so that we also get to understand. I might think that I'm digital, but it's not maybe according to the definition. It's a bit the concept that is out there, or how I understand it, it's totally different. So you are the expert, you can tell us how we should understand it better.
Thank you, Winnie. I mean, you will know in the end of the third workshop, we could ask this question again and we'll see how you score yourself. But Winnie, can I ask, just so I get to know a little bit better, your members, what sector are they from?
For us, I work with Union of Kenya Civil Servants. So majority are civil servants. We organize in the mainstream public service.
Yeah.
And in Kenya, we have two sets of government. There is the county government and there is the national government. So majority of our members are drawn from the national government. And these are members from different sectors, government parastatals, you know, all the government ministries. And yeah, that is where we draw our members from. So they are kind of mixed kind of membership. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And Kenya is an exciting country, right? In relation to digitalization, it's one of the countries which has sort of the most digitalized public services. And am I correct, in Africa? I think so. No?
Yeah, since President Uhuru came on, and he became the president, he tried to digitalize many government services, but I wouldn't say that we are quite there yet. There's still some resistance, and people have not taken it positively. You find that people, especially people from the village side, you know, it's quite difficult explaining to them that you need to go to a cyber, download this, and you know. So the government, yes, it's a good concept, but there was no that civic education about digitalization of government services. So that bit is still missing. People from the village don't quite understand. So you have to, you know, they have to like come all the way to Nairobi, then being told to go. We have this, they're called Huduma centers, where you can get all government services in one place. But still, it's quite difficult trying to explain to this person who does not understand English or does not even understand Swahili. And trying to break it to, you know, mother tongue for them to understand. And most of the documents are in English. So you see that part of translating for each and every person to get to understand, it's still quite a challenge. So the government just assumes like everyone went to school and they know the basic English, but when you go to government offices, you find the clerks there having a difficult time explaining to this old grandmother that for you to get this pension, you need to fill this and this, and it's written in English, and you, I don't know, it's quite a process. So it's quite hectic, I would say.
So Winnie,
though for young people, for young people, it's easier for us because we know we have the basic knowledge of you know, IT and computer here and there. We can just go to a cyber, we can do it ourselves. But for the older generation, it's a barrier, I would say.
But also, Winnie, one thing that you're pointing at there is actually something that's a global issue, and that is that the majority of internet sites are in English, or of course, when we look at China, it will be in Chinese, right? But the majority of services or companies are English based. And the need to translate, in your case, to Swahili and to other languages to really democratize this is so needed, but it's never given enough money, right? And time. And this is a big attack, as Daniel was saying in the beginning, on the democracy aspect, right? If you're not training the people from the villages or the older populations, they can't even get this information in their mother tongue. then of course you are, literally cutting people off. So that's a very strong point, and I assume that some of the rest of you also experience that same sort of digital divides between us. Thank you, Winnie. Now, Daniel, Roberto, are there other people who have their hands up, or should we move on?
Yes, so we have Randa, Dr. Randa.
Yeah.
شكرا يعطيك العافية.
Thank you very much. I am from the health and pharmaceutical industry syndicate or union in Jordan. In Jordan, the unions are still using the traditional methods for work. Using digital means or IT is still something new for the labor unions in Jordan. The labor unions are still illiterate in using these digital means. Thus, they are not knowledgeable about the damages, harms, and benefits of these tools. So how can, or they do not know how can they harness the benefits of these digital technologies to defend the rights of their members. In the health services syndicate, we have different members, nurses, doctors, or workers in the health sector. 70% are usually women. Here, women and men working in this sector do usually shifts. So here, their breaks are of limited time. So usually when they have a break, they do actually spend that time with their children or find another job to increase their income. So some do no longer have the capabilities to be knowledgeable about the digital tools, to learn new digital tools, or to learn about the importance of IT and the digital world, and how these can facilitate their work and help them. With the COVID-19 pandemic, many ministries and many other institutions used online work, and some of them try to develop their capabilities and they try to improve their IT knowledge and digital knowledge. But in the health sector, this was difficult. As you know, the health sector had burdened the toll of dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So they were directly providing services to the patients and the clients. So in the health sector, the online was very low of sort. From based of my knowledge and based on the discussions I had with the members of our union, we found that they do not have sufficient time, first, to have digital literacy. Second, most of the members are women, so women do have a second job of caring for their children and caring for their homes. And most of the members do not have modern cell phones. And if they have modern smartphones, they would use this only for Facebook or WhatsApp to call and to use the social media to talk about their lives, basically. And that's it. The other challenge that we had, PSI conducted a number of trainings online for the unions. I was personally responsible for implementing some activities. I found many challenges in implementing these activities. Why? Because I needed to communicate 1 week prior to the event with the members so that they understand how to log on Zoom and how to use the basic features of the Zoom. Also, when they joined the event on Zoom, they didn't know how to raise their hands, how to open their microphone, how to open the camera. So this was very tiring, and we needed to train the members on usage of technologies and to know the benefits and their harms. This was a challenge for me. Another point I want to raise on this is that some of the workers, member of our unions, are working in public services like in sanitation or in cleaning, and they have low wages. So they do not have enough resources, money to buy a laptop or to buy a smartphone to communicate with us. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've lost communication with these workers. And this is a huge work that we need to work on. Another point, they usually say that I wish to join these meetings online, but I do have two jobs. I have a shift in a private pharmacy in the morning, and the afternoon I have another shift in a second pharmacy. So they say that they do not have sufficient time to log on to the Zoom events. So these are some of the difficulties and challenges we are faced with, and that I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sandra. And those are profound sharings, right, around how, number one, the lack of public education in this, coupled with...
Oui, voilà ce dont je parlais, manque d'éducation publique. Il y a un problème d'équilibre.
Key notion of time. I really want to thank you for sharing that, and also the union then struggle about, well, if people don't have internet access, don't have devices, and you lose contact with them in a time that is so serious and so dire as in this pandemic. And there, and you know, the quick solution and the only right solution would be if our governments actually invested in making sure that the internet was affordable, that there are devices that are affordable, and that they also invested in the training. But, you know, very, very few governments across the entire world do that. They are more or less letting, so to speak, the digital divides between the rich and the poor, between the urban and the rural areas grow. And this, of course, is giving space to the likes of Facebook, who came up with their free basic app and so on to sort of conquer that field. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that, but it is certainly a dilemma that has no easy solution, especially because, you know, many of the countries in your region can't afford to bridge these digital divides. So the only people who are doing this are the private big tech companies, Facebook, Amazon, Alibaba, and so on. And it's in that space that we also have to be quite critical. So thank you for sharing. Now, we should move on a little bit, but I just want to see, is there one more person who would like the floor, Daniel?
Yes, and so yeah. I'll give it to Demba.
Yeah.
Oui, bonjour à tous, moi c'est Demba Karium de...
Good morning, I'm Demba Karium. I am from the Public Service Union Federation, Chad. Aside the difficulty to have access to internet, talking about my members or population, it is a tool not well understood by the majority. We have not been trained to know how useful digitalization or the tools can change our work and then build our capacities. People do not understand the usefulness of these tools. Furthermore, having access to internet means that you need to answer the following question: of what use will internet be for us? Majority of our work is really manual work that we do. Even at the government level, governments do not ease access to internet to majority of the population working in really precarious conditions. We do everything manually, so much so that in some departments where they should have some machines and set up database that do not exist. And so paper is still with us, the way we do our work. When there is digitalization, well, people look at it negatively. Indeed, we have better information sharing with digitalization using Facebook, WhatsApp, and now with Twitter. But then it is really basic. I recall talking about digital, monetary, economy, cash money, money transfer, which is being used by people, but these remain information, and people are very reluctant to have access to it because people have been asking themselves, how safe are we using these types of tools? For some civil servants, they use their bank cards to have access to their accounts. No, they prefer using the checks, going in person to the banks, to the teller, because they're afraid people can have access to their data. And this is a very opaque space. About 15% have access to these tools. Majority of them are young people because they are very knowledgeable in using the tools. They understand the importance of smartphones and they use them in sharing some information. But for majority of people, elderly people, from 35 to 40 years, we need definitely to enhance the knowledge of it. And we need to safeguard these tools. We need to make them understand that these digital tools can be of use to them, the way they do their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Demba. Can I just hear again, what country were you from?
From Chad.
Chad.
Okay.
Chad.
You know, Demba, to be honest, I wish the rest of the world had the critical reluctance that the people of Chad have to these digital tools. Because yes, they can be very beneficial. They can connect us. They could, you know, enhance our privacy rights, our lives. But at the moment, the way that a lot of these tools are being implemented into public services, but also into our lives in general, as Daniel Batossa was saying in the beginning, then they're not serving the workers or the people's interests. So, you know, of course, in Chad, what will happen is what is happening in countries around you, and you will become more digitalized and you will experience, like our sister in Kenya was speaking about, around the digital divides. And hopefully, you know, by really learning from one another, you can begin to ask of your government to put transition policies in place that enable and strengthen and educate the citizens in a sustainable way, right? And hopefully, you know, through this course, we'll be able to tune in a little bit on what those demands could be. So, comrades, brothers and sisters, Daniel, I think we're going to have to move on because we should soon give ourselves and the interpreters a little break. So, can I just continue, let's say 10 minutes more, and then I think we'll have a quick break after that. Is that okay? Great.
And let me say sorry to those who raised their hands and I couldn't call you. I think it's because of time. And so we would really appreciate if you could type your points in the chat and we'll take note of that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so we kind of put the picture here. Thank you all for all of those of you who who did share and had time to share, you know, we're getting the picture here of an unequal access to digital technologies, poorly educated citizens and workers around these issues, and the influx of technologies that are being used, yet we don't have the time or the skills really to know what's happening when we use them. Now, one thing I want to note, and all of you who have spoken have mentioned WhatsApp. And I know WhatsApp is a very widely used tool across the African region and the Arab region. Now, remember that WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, and all of the data that they are generating there, they're using. And in session 3, we're going to talk a little bit more about the tools that we as the unions maybe should be encouraging our members to use, which protect our members and us as unions more, you know, protect our privacy, make sure that a company like Facebook, and trust me, Facebook is not a good company. They do not want to serve our interests well. That we can use another tool rather than WhatsApp. But we'll come back to that in workshop number 3. But please note that WhatsApp is not respecting your privacy as it should. Now, I'm going to skip a little bit quickly from the next slide here. And this was also a question, and, you know, hold this in mind. But many of us overestimate the skills, the digital skills and knowledge of the management in public services. So those of you who live in countries where the public services are becoming digitalized, you know, the safest way to approach this is that the manager in a health sector or in hospital or in human resources, scheduling workers, we must not think they understand the tools they're using, because many of them don't. And this means that when you become more
We seem to have lost Christiana.
Yes, we have lost Christina. That's too bad. Hopefully she'll join in a few minutes. Maybe at this time, I would give the chance to those who wanted to make their points, and because of time, we didn't. Okay, she's back. She's back. Sorry, she's back.
No one is on the floor.
Okay, sorry. Right. So whilst we wait for Christina, Martha, you had a point to make concerning the question Christina asked. So this time you have the opportunity to share your thoughts whilst we wait for her. So Martha, you can go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, what I wanted to share is almost what the others have been sharing. You know, here in Cameroon, we are water and energy union in EO, an electrical company, and we have most of our workers in the remote areas